We'd better abort. Not yet, the swift reply from the test director cut through their headsets. Hang on, we're working on it. Ben? The Gulfstream pilot's voice was taking on a new level of urgency as he called his onboard test engineer, but as usual, he was trying to wrap his concern in the joking tones of a stressed airman who wasn't about to admit the pressure he felt. Ben, now would be a very good time to tell me what your brainchild thinks it's doing. A temper tantrum, perhaps? Ben mashed the interphone switch again, trying and failing to match the casual tone the pilot had adopted. I don't know. If they're not commanding the descent from the AWACS, I can tell you for sure it's not in the program. Is it thinking on its own, Ben? The co-pilot added. You know, making up some solution we don't know about. You're not some secret fan of the HAL 9000 computer in 2001 Space Odyssey now, are you? Ben felt his mind racing through an impossible tangle of technical details in search of a reassuring answer. There was none. Maybe we better disconnect. Ground, the pilot transmitted without hesitation. I'm unsafing the kill switch down here. If we descend through 8,000, I'm pulling the plug on Winky. Ben suppressed a tiny flash of resentment. He hated the term the test pilots had coined to belittle the complex automatic system. Winky, indeed. Pilots and engineers were always on a collision course, he'd been told, and he was feeling the truth of it as he punched the transmit switch again. We could try a reset, he added, aware that the AWACS above couldn't hear him on the interphone. They could have screwed up something back there in entering the maneuver plan, the test point altitudes, for instance. Crown, the pilot was transmitting again. We're descending through 10,000. I'm just short of redline speed, and your sage advice for Sage 10 would be greatly appreciated, son, sometime about now. Stand by, the test director repeated. There was a pause the length of a heartbeat before the captain responded. No, too late. We're disconnecting. Shit, Ben thought to himself, letting his mind use a word he detested. He sighed and sat back, feeling a cloak of disappointment enfold him. There would be corporate hell to pay for a bad test sequence tonight. He wouldn't be the only one in the crosshairs of company dissatisfaction, of course. There were more than 60 software experts working on the top-secret system. But it had been Dr. Ben Cole, the young and the bold, who'd risked his fledgling career and his fair-haired status of wonderkind to take the lead position, and at the age of 34 he could easily end up a has-been. Ben felt the Gulfstream undulate through some mild turbulence. They're pulling out, he told himself, letting his mind disconnect for a few seconds, entering one of the tiny distractive mental loops that always helped him recharge. Whatever happened, he would be employable, of course. He could still work most anywhere he wanted to, and maybe he could even throttle some of his eternal ambition in favor of doing a little living for a change. He'd had no life at all for the past 2 years in Anchorage. He'd been too busy to even have a girlfriend, although he'd dated a few local women and taken time to make a few touristy side trips. I know almost nothing about Alaska, he thought, resolving, as he had 100 times before, to take a 4-month vacation when this push was over. Maybe he could see some of Denali National Park on foot. He wasn't much of an outdoorsman like his dad had been, but the fond memories of camping and hiking in the Rockies in his teens with his dad as a guide were always hanging there as a Valhalla to be re-experienced. He was sure he could figure out the basics of camping. After all, pitching a tent was just an applied engineering problem. More radio chatter caught his attention, and Ben forced his mind back to the matters at hand, expecting to hear a decision to reposition and try it again. Up there, I'm getting nothing here, the Gulfstream pilot was saying. Ben's eyes went to the screens, wondering why the altitude readout wasn't showing the level off. They'd disengaged at 8,000, hadn't they? We're trying to break the link up here, Sage 10, but the computer's not responding. Ben recognized the test director's voice. What did he mean, not responding? He heard the pilot's voice snap back an answer as he came forward in his seat, instantly re-engaging. Crown, we're dropping through 4,000 at the same descent rate, same heading. Do something. The altitude readout on his screen showed 3,200 feet, its numbers unwinding. Ben, can you hear us? The pilot was asking, his words implying a previous call Ben had missed. A squirt of adrenaline filled Ben's bloodstream as he answered, his voice a bit strange. I'm here. Do something, damn it. Help us disconnect. Use the guarded disconnect switch, Ben replied. We did. It doesn't work, the pilot said as the co-pilot chimed in, his voice taut with tension. 1,500 is flying us into the water. Now, Ben. The guarded switch won't work? Ben repeated blankly, his mind in a daze. How could anyone think under such pressure? The readout in front of him was still whizzing downward as he reached forward and keyed a disconnect command into the computer, sending it just as rapidly through the telemetry link to the main processor aboard the AWACS.